You're not losing time because you're lazy. You're losing it in the corridors where explanations echo and nobody is truly listening. Tonight, imagine you're tuning a quiet frequency that the world forgot. No track list, no interruptions, just a steady voice reminding you that silence is not surrender. It's mastery. In a culture allergic to stillness, where every breath is converted into updates and every thought begs to be posted, there is a more ancient technology than any glowing screen. That technology is the simple act of returning to yourself. You, the listener, with 1,000 open tabs in the mind, you are not a machine. You are the sun behind weather, the deep well beneath chatter, the original station broadcasting clarity long before noise learned to dance. Let's be honest together. For whom have you been building the scaffolding of your life? The nameless crowd whose attention departs faster than it arrives. The imagined jury that convenes each night inside your head. Or that single face from years ago, still dictating today's itinerary, despite having left the room. If you are tired, if your energy feels pawned to strangers, this fatigue is a map, not a mystery. You've been handing out spare keys to rooms only you were meant to inhabit. You explain, you defend, you make your soul perform. And the days grow thin around the edges, as if someone has been taking quiet bites out of your time. There is another way. The Buddha pointed to it not as a sermon, but as a simple direction of travel back to the unmoved point in the turning world. Picture a potter's wheel spinning fast, the clay flinging outward at the rim, but in the center there is stillness. That stillness is the place you begin, not as an escape, but as a base of operations. When you stand there, you do not become selfish. You become precise. Your compassion stops leaking. Your work stops begging. Your presence stops auditioning for roles it doesn't want. And suddenly, the world which once demanded 1,000 explanations from you asks for only the one thing it can't counterfeit: your groundedness. So we take the first breath together as proof that this return is possible. No fanfare, no mantra theatrics, a plain inhale that remembers the body, an unhurried exhale that remembers the ground. Breath like a rope thrown down a well, catching the bucket and pulling attention back to daylight. You feel the ribs widen. You feel the jaw unclench without needing to instruct it. Already, the mind has fewer places to hide. And without a single outward change, you are different. Not because the world softened, but because you no longer carry the world in your teeth. Stay with me here. The next minute is the beginning of a different arithmetic. In that minute, you do nothing dramatic. You let one thought float past without boarding it. You treat your attention like a candle's flame in a room that used to be full of drafts. Someone may still open the door from time to time. Winds may poke their curious fingers in, but you're learning where to stand so the flame keeps its shape. This, more than any tactic, is the shift that separates the frantic from the free. When a thought barrels in announcing urgency, you greet it the way a doorman greets weather, politely, without changing your address to match the storm. Perhaps you've noticed how the world rewards noise with the illusion of movement. It claps for speed, confuses volume with value, makes idols of momentum even when it's running in circles. Silence, on the other hand, is the underrated craftsman. It trims away the excess until only the essential remains. The monk sweeping the courtyard each morning is not obsessed with leaves. He is stewarding a mind that remembers to return. The worker at her desk, who closes all the unnecessary windows, isn't being rude to information. She is building a fence so her focus can graze in peace. In these small, almost invisible gestures, the ordinary becomes lit from within. There's a story I love about a courier in a riverside town. He was admired for speed and stamina, always flitting from one urgent message to the next. One afternoon, hurrying across a long wooden bridge, he saw an elderly calligrapher lift a bundle that bowed his shoulders. The courier's sealed letter pressed to his chest shook his head and ran on. All day his feet rapped like a metronome on stone, and all day he delivered words that did not belong to him. At dusk, he returned over the same bridge and found the calligrapher washing a brush in the river's amber shallows. "Master," he said, "what are you writing this late?" The old man smiled without looking up. "I am practicing the blank," he said. "Tomorrow, it will let me write a single true line." The courier carried that sentence home like a lantern. The next morning he moved just as swiftly, but the quiet in him traveled faster. He no longer mistook busyness for belonging. He learned to carry only what he authored. The stance, the breath, the posture of a mind returned to itself. You might worry that becoming quiet will make you invisible, that if you stop explaining, you'll be mistaken for weak. The opposite is true. In rooms where everyone is busy being a mirror, the one who becomes a window changes the air. Presence is not a performance. It is a permission you grant others to lay down their masks. When you rest in your own center, those around you feel a different gravity. They do not always understand it, but they recognize its safety. Your silence becomes a kind of tuning fork, asking no one to match it, yet mysteriously helping them find their note. Try this small experiment the next time someone throws you an invitation to argue, to prove, to explain more than the situation merits. Do not harden. Do not retreat. Let your spine remember its line. Let your face soften like light on water. Offer the few words that are both kind and complete, and nothing beyond. You will notice a curious thing. The conversation may continue, but the hook cannot find purchase in you. What used to take hours of rumination dissolves in minutes. What used to drain your entire afternoon now costs only a brief exhale. In that saved space, your best work begins to happen. The work that doesn't always announce itself, the work that builds a house inside you, with rooms you never had time to furnish. There's an ethics to attention that Buddhist teaching keeps bringing us back to. Right effort is not about burning hotter. It is about tending the correct flame. You can fight every fire the day throws at you, or you can clear the dry brush ahead of time, so sparks have nowhere to spread. When you begin the day with even the smallest ritual of returning breath posture, a line of intention, the mind remembers that it has a home. Then, when the requests arrive, you aren't standing in the street begging for shelter. You answer from the doorway of your own dwelling. If you need a picture to carry into the coming days, imagine a field left to rest. From the road, it may look neglected, but the soil is gathering its strength. Microbial festivals are happening under the surface. The architecture of fertility is being rebuilt in silence. Your moments of chosen quiet are that field. They are not glamorous. They will not trend. But they rebuild what hustle has thinned out. And when your season to plant returns, the roots you set will run deeper. The shoots will rise straighter, and a storm will be just a storm, not a verdict. Even now, as you listen, perhaps a part of you is tempted to turn this into a task list. Resist the urge to weaponize wisdom against yourself. Keep it simple. The point is not to juggle more skillfully, but to put down what was never yours to juggle. When approval tries to rent your mind, check its references. When comparison tries to move its furniture into your living room, show it the guest house with a checkout time. When worry shows up with its suitcase of what-ifs, Escort it to the porch and let the night air handle the rest. You do not owe the world a running commentary on your soul. You owe your life the intimacy of your attention. That intimacy changes everything. Meals taste different when you actually meet them with your senses. Work feels different when you're not trying to make it prove who you are. Love becomes lighter when it no longer carries the cargo of your unexamined fears. And failure, let's say that word, softly failure, becomes a teacher whose lessons you can finally hear without the classroom of shame. If you've been waiting for a sign that it's time to step off the stage of constant explanation, let this be enough. Nothing wise has ever demanded a megaphone. The lotus does not argue its way out of the mud. It rises because that's its nature, and it rises quietly. You are allowed to be that simple. You are allowed to become unbusy without becoming unkind, to become quiet without becoming small, to become focused without becoming hardened. The middle path has room for your whole life, the spreadsheets and the sutras, the school runs and the sitting still. You do not have to abandon one world to honor the other. You are building a bridge that only you need to understand while you cross it. Now we close this hour the way we opened it, with a return so gentle it can fit inside any moment you choose. The palm rests lightly against the chest as if acknowledging an old friend. The shoulders drop their armor. The subtle invitation goes out to every part of you that has been defending against imaginary wars. You may stand down. In this body, in this breath, in this unspectacular second, you have arrived. The wheel continues to spin as wheels do, but you are at the quiet axis. From here, you don't need to talk your life into meaning. You can live it. The night settles like ink poured over the edges of the world, and in that darkness, the mind begins its usual trick, replaying, rewording, rehearsing. But somewhere underneath the hum of unfinished sentences, there is a quieter sound, the kind you can only hear when everything else has stopped demanding to be understood. That sound is stillness, not the absence of motion, but the presence of mastery. Tonight, let's sit together inside that stillness and talk about its discipline, the art of speaking less and meaning more. Silence has been misunderstood. People think it's what remains when words run out. But silence, true silence, is not what's left behind. It's what exists before and beneath. It's the wide ocean that all words are dipped into before they take shape. The Buddha once said that right speech is born not from eloquence, but from listening. And to listen deeply, one must learn to stop filling every corner with sound. In a world obsessed with expression, this is an act of quiet rebellion. Imagine standing at the edge of a calm lake. The water mirrors the sky so perfectly that you can't tell where the earth ends and heaven begins. That reflection exists because the lake is still. If the surface were broken by constant ripples, the sky would vanish from sight. The mind works in the same way. The quieter it becomes, the more clearly it reflects truth. But we've been trained to fear silence, to rush into speech as though the pause itself might expose us. So we keep talking, adding noise, stacking words, burying wisdom under explanation. There is a story of a young monk who once asked his master, "How do I achieve enlightenment?" The master said nothing. Minutes passed, hours. Finally, the student grew restless. "Master," he said again, "why won't you answer me?" The old man smiled gently. "Because the question was born from noise," he replied. "And until the noise leaves, the answer cannot enter." The student didn't understand right away. None of us do. But years later, after countless days of sweeping, sitting, and watching his thoughts dissolve like mist, the silence began to speak. That's what true strength feels like, not a roar, but a deep, wordless knowing. It's what keeps you steady when others mistake your calm for apathy. It's what lets you listen to misunderstanding without rushing to defend yourself. The strongest person in the room is often the one who speaks last or not at all. Because silence doesn't mean ignorance, it means self-control. It means you have stopped outsourcing your peace to people who haven't earned the right to hold it. You've probably felt the urge to explain yourself when accused, to justify your worth when doubted, to shout your truth into ears closed by their own noise. But what happens when you do? The more you argue for your value, the less you feel it. The more you speak from defense, the smaller your voice becomes. Every unnecessary word is a drop of energy spent. Every reaction costs clarity. Imagine what would happen if you stopped paying that price. There's a different rhythm available to you, one that doesn't demand proof or applause. It begins with restraint, not suppression, not swallowing what's true, but restraint. The pause between stimulus and response, where awareness lives. Between what happens to you and what you do next, there is a small sacred gap. That gap is where your freedom hides. Most people rush past it. The mindful learn to live there. So tonight, practice the pause. When a thought rises like a wave, don't surf it right away. Watch it crest, crash, and dissolve. When emotion knocks, let it sit outside the door for a moment before you open. This doesn't make you cold, it makes you conscious. The one who pauses chooses. The one who reacts repeats. A Zen teacher once said, "If you can't find peace in silence, you won't find it in words either." The truth of that line is heavy, but it's also liberating. It means you can stop chasing the perfect reply, the right phrase, the magic combination that will make others finally see you. You can let silence do the talking. Because silence, when aligned with presence, is magnetic. It says everything without saying anything. You've seen it before, the person who doesn't flinch in chaos, who sits quietly while everyone else scrambles. Their calm unsettles the storm, not because they're indifferent, but because they're anchored. People sense it even if they can't explain it. That's the power of alignment. When your inner world stops arguing with itself, the outer world begins to listen. But silence takes training. It asks you to sit through the noise of your own mind, to face the things you've been avoiding with words. At first, it feels unbearable, like stepping into a room where all the lights have been turned off. You'll want to fill it with sound, with anything. But stay. Let the discomfort speak. It's not punishment, it's purification. Each time you resist the impulse to fill the gap, you make space for wisdom to emerge. Silence also teaches humility. You start to realize how many times your words were not bridges, but walls. How often you spoke not to connect, but to control. Silence shows you where the ego hides, dressed in language that sounds righteous, but is really afraid. When you see that compassion grows, you speak less because you understand more. You begin to hear beneath the words of others the fear, the longing, the confusion, and suddenly, conversations become lighter, kinder, more real. Try this tomorrow. Speak half as much as usual. In meetings, let your words be a river, not a flood. At home, answer with patience instead of reflex. When anger knocks, invite breath before response. You'll notice how the world slows down to meet your tempo. You'll notice how much energy you save. The silence between your sentences will start to hum with clarity. You'll hear your own voice differently, softer, steadier, truer. And when someone asks, "Why are you so quiet these days?" smile. because what they're really saying is, I can feel your peace, and I don't know how to name it. There is a beautiful paradox in all of this. The less you speak from ego, the more your presence speaks for you. The quieter your exterior becomes, the louder your authenticity grows. Words then become tools, not weapons. You use them with precision, not habit. You stop broadcasting noise and start transmitting meaning. So the next time you feel pulled into the chaos of conversation, when everyone is talking over each other, when you feel that itch to assert or correct, remember this: not every truth needs an audience. Not every opinion deserves an answer. Sometimes the most powerful sentence is the one you never say. Before we close this hour, let's practice a small ritual together. Take a slow breath in. Notice the air as it enters, cool, alive, unhurried. Hold it gently, then let it go. Feel the release, the unclenching. Let the breath remind you that silence is not emptiness, it's space. And space is where everything true begins to grow. When the mind grows still, life becomes sharper, not duller. You see what was always there but drowned in noise, the kindness in a stranger's eyes, the music in ordinary rain, the relief of not having to win every conversation. In the discipline of stillness, you begin to realize that silence is not what remains when the world stops talking. Silence is what allows you to finally hear. And that's where we'll leave it tonight, on the edge of a pause in the hum between thoughts, where wisdom waits patiently for your return. The night breathes softly, and with every exhale, something in you loosens. You may not notice it at first, the gentle release of tension, the quiet uncoiling of thoughts you've carried too long. But as the silence deepens, you begin to sense it. That subtle truth the Buddha whispered beneath the Bodhi tree: you only lose what you cling to. We hold so tightly, don't we? To our identities, our reputations, our plans, our pain. We clutch memories as if they were proof that we existed, and yet it's that very grip that drains the life from us. Imagine holding a handful of sand. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. That's attachment, the quiet thief of peace. Every moment you cling, suffering is born, not from the thing itself, but from your resistance to its impermanence. The relationship that ended the opportunity, that vanished the word that wasn't said, you keep replaying them, rewriting what cannot be rewritten. But the world keeps moving, waves returning to shore, blossoms falling without regret. Why do you, a being of infinite renewal, insist on holding the past like a stone in your pocket? Letting go isn't forgetting. It's seeing clearly. It's realizing that the storm that shook your branches didn't touch your roots. The core of you, the quiet witness behind the noise, has always been untouched. You don't have to defend it. You only have to return to it. Once in a small village, a monk was insulted by a traveler passing through. The man's words were sharp, thrown like stones, but the monk simply smiled. When asked later why he hadn't defended himself, the monk replied, "If someone offers you a gift and you don't accept it, to whom does it belong?" The lesson is simple, yet it takes a lifetime to master. Not every gift must be received. Not every battle must be fought. Peace is not won through conquest, but through clarity. Think of how many insults, fears, and worries you've accepted as your own. You've carried them, polished them, turned them into proof of your worthlessness or your anger. What if you set them down tonight? What if you said, "This is not mine to keep"? The moment you stop identifying with what passes through you, freedom begins, because you are not every thought that visits your mind, nor every emotion that floods your heart. You are the sky, vast, open, untouched. The clouds may come and go, but they have never changed the sky. Detachment isn't coldness. It's clarity wrapped in compassion. It doesn't say I don't care. It says I choose peace. It's not apathy. It's understanding. You can love someone deeply and still let them go. You can honor a dream and still release it when it no longer serves your becoming. You can forgive a wound without pretending it never cut you. The art of letting go is not about erasing. It's about seeing through. There's a reason Buddhist monks shave their heads and wear robes of simplicity. It's not rejection of the world, but remembrance, a physical metaphor for release. Each cut of hair, each thread of cloth, a declaration I own nothing that owns me. You may not live in a monastery, but the practice is the same. You can unclutter your spirit without renouncing the world. You can walk through your life lighter, freer, unburdened by yesterday's noise. Here's a small practice to begin. When something stings, a comment, a disappointment, an unexpected loss, pause. Don't rush to escape it or explain it away. Simply breathe and whisper to yourself, this too is impermanent. Feel the truth of that line settle in your body. No storm lasts forever. Even the heaviest grief given time and breath becomes a soft rain that nourishes what remains. You do not heal by holding tighter. You heal by opening the hand. Ask yourself tonight, what am I clinging to that's already trying to leave me? A belief that I must prove my worth. A person who's no longer walking beside me. A version of myself that no longer fits the skin I'm in. We cling because we fear emptiness. We think that without the familiar weight of our stories, we'll disappear. But emptiness in Buddhism is not nothingness, it's spaciousness. It's the vast sky that allows the stars to shine. When you let go, you don't vanish, you expand. There's another story of a master and a student crossing a muddy road after heavy rain. Ahead of them stood a woman hesitant to step into the muck. The master lifted her in his arms, carried her across, and set her down. Hours later, as they walked in silence, the student frowned and said, "Master monks are not supposed to touch women." The teacher smiled. "I set her down at the riverbank. Why are you still carrying her?" The student's silence that followed was heavier than the mud they'd crossed. How many things have you set down physically, but still carry mentally? The argument from years ago. The word you regret. The opportunity that slipped by. Every thought you replay is another weight you agreed to lift. But you can also set it down now quietly, without ceremony. The world will not collapse. In fact, it will open. Letting go doesn't mean letting life drift aimlessly. It means trusting the current. It's rowing without forcing the river. It's knowing that your task is the action, not the outcome. When you loosen your grip on results, something beautiful happens. You begin to experience life as it unfolds, not as you demand it to be. That's real peace, not the silence of control, but the harmony of surrender. Sometimes people mistake attachment for love. They think that to care is to cling, that to hold is to heal. But love in its purest form is freedom. It is the ability to say, I wish you well, even if your path no longer crosses mine. To love like that, without ownership, without fear, that's the flowering of wisdom. It's the kind of love that grows in silence, blooms in acceptance, and never begs to be noticed. So tonight, as you listen, I invite you to imagine your attachments like lanterns in your hands. One by one, open your fingers. Let them drift upward. Watch them rise, the names, the faces, the expectations, the fears. Each one a small sun fading into the wide night, and as they disappear, Notice the weight leaving your chest. Notice the stillness returning. What remains is what was always yours, the space to breathe, to see, to simply be. When you stop clinging, you don't lose the world, you rediscover it. Every sound becomes music. Every breath becomes prayer. Every passing moment becomes enough, because you finally understand that nothing was ever yours to begin with. And in that realization, everything becomes yours again, but this time without chains. The less you cling, the lighter you walk. The lighter you walk, the clearer you see. And when you see clearly, you realize peace was never something to chase. It was what remained when you finally opened your hand. Let go. Just for tonight. Let go. The night doesn't ask for anything. It doesn't demand applause for its stillness or validation for its patience. It simply is. And maybe that's the first lesson in discipline, that consistency doesn't need witnesses. Discipline has been given a cruel reputation in modern times. We think of it as pressure, as punishment, as a cold fist forcing us into routines we secretly resent. But in the language of the Dhamma discipline, sila is devotion. It's love organized into structure. It's the quiet agreement between your higher self and the rest of you that still forgets. When the Buddha spoke of a disciplined mind, he didn't mean a rigid one. He meant a mind that knows where home is, a mind that can walk through chaos without getting lost. In truth, discipline is the most tender form of self-care there is. It says, I love myself enough to show up even when inspiration does not arrive on time. Think of a bamboo grove. For years, the bamboo grows unseen, its roots burrowing deep in darkness. People passing by think nothing is happening. But beneath the soil, the plant is preparing. When the moment is right, it shoots upward faster than any other tree in the forest. That's how inner structure works, invisible, patient, powerful. Discipline is the root system of transformation. Maybe you've been waiting for motivation, that fleeting spark that makes everything easy. But motivation is weather. Discipline is climate. One changes by the hour, the other sustains life. The truly peaceful aren't ruled by moods. They are guided by vows. Discipline is how you protect your purpose from the moods of the day. It's the way a monk returns to his cushion at dawn, whether the heart feels light or heavy. It's the way a writer puts down one honest sentence, even when the words come slow. It's the way you keep your small promises to yourself, not to prove your worth, but to remember it. Every morning offers a question. Will you serve your impulses or your intention? Discipline is simply choosing the second answer again and again until it becomes your nature. But make no mistake, discipline isn't about control. It's about alignment. It's the act of tuning the instrument so the music can flow through without distortion. Too tight and the string breaks. Too loose and it makes no sound. Balance, that's where devotion hides. Let me tell you a quiet story. In a distant monastery, a young monk once asked his teacher, "Master, why must I sweep the courtyard every morning when there is no dust?" The old monk smiled and said, "It is not the courtyard I am sweeping." The student didn't understand until years later, when his own thoughts began to gather like leaves. Then he realized, discipline is not about keeping the ground clean. It's about keeping the mind ready, ready to see, ready to love, ready to act with calm precision. Your own courtyard may not be a monastery floor. It might be your desk, your kitchen, the space around your breath. But the principle is the same. Each time you practice, whether you meditate, write, walk, stretch, or simply breathe with awareness, you sweep the courtyard of your life. You make space for clarity to enter. So start small. That's where all sacred habits begin. One act repeated with care becomes a rhythm. Rhythm becomes ritual. Ritual becomes refuge. Don't wait for grand transformation. It hides inside ordinary repetition. Wake up at the same hour and meet the dawn like an old friend. Sit for 5 minutes of silence before opening the day's noise. Drink your morning water slowly enough to hear it move. At night, write one line of gratitude, not for the big victories, but for the tiny ones. I stayed calm when anger knocked. I listened instead of defending. I remembered to breathe. These are the quiet bricks of peace. And when you fail, because you will, because we all do not punish yourself. Discipline built on shame collapses. Discipline built on compassion expands. If you miss a day, smile and return the next. The Buddha never demanded perfection. He asked for persistence. Let your habits be gentle guardians, not jailers. The purpose of structure is not to confine you, but to free you from chaos. The routine is the raft, not the destination. Once it carries you across the river, you can set it down. But without it, you'll keep swimming in circles, mistaking exhaustion for effort. Listen closely. Discipline is not about doing more. It's about doing what matters with full attention. When you wash a single bowl as if it's the only bowl in the universe, that's discipline. When you choose presence over multitasking, that's discipline. When you say no to what dilutes your energy, so you can say yes to what aligns with your truth, that's the kind of discipline that becomes divine. Over time, this quiet devotion begins to reshape your inner landscape. You stop needing external pressure. The practice itself becomes joy. What used to feel like effort begins to feel like breathing. You stop chasing balance and start embodying it. There's an invisible dignity that comes from consistency. No applause, no spotlight, just the quiet satisfaction of someone who keeps their word to their own soul. The world may never notice, but peace notices. The heart notices. And that's the hidden gift of discipline. It turns ordinary moments into meditation. It teaches you that peace is not a place you visit when everything is calm. It's a muscle you build in the middle of chaos. So tonight, let this be your prayer. May my actions serve my values. May my habits protect my peace. May my effort be steady, not strained. May I keep showing up even when no one sees. Because one day, without fanfare, without witness, all those quiet efforts will bloom at once. And you'll realize that while you were busy keeping your vows, peace was keeping you. The monk sweeps. The bamboo grows. The night stands still. And you keep your promise to rise. There's a certain quiet that follows realization, the kind that arrives not with thunder, but with a single steady breath. It's the stillness that comes when you finally understand that not every presence in your life deserves a permanent place. That peace is not found by collecting people, but by releasing those who dim your light. You've been taught that letting go is cruel, that walking away makes you cold. But look closer. What's truly cruel is staying in rooms that suffocate your spirit, pretending that endurance is the same as compassion. The Buddha once said, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." The wisdom of that sentence is both simple and revolutionary. The kindness you offer others must also be offered inward, or it rots into resentment. Think of your peace as a candle. You may light it for others, but if someone keeps cupping their hand over the flame, whether with criticism, manipulation, or constant chaos, you cannot keep relighting it for them forever. At some point, you must guard that small flame as sacred. That's not selfishness, that's survival. There's a story often told in temples about a monk who walked each morning with a lantern. When people greeted him, he would raise the light in silence. One night, a drunk traveler mocked him, puffing out the flame with a laugh. The monk did not argue. He simply smiled, relit the lantern, and continued on his way. When a student later asked why he hadn't scolded the man, the monk said, "When someone offers you poison, you don't have to drink it, but you also don't have to stop your journey. You see, not every battle is yours to fight, and not every person is yours to fix. The mind that clings to toxic ties calls it loyalty. The heart that fears solitude calls it love. But real love, true compassion, never asks you to shrink. It doesn't demand that you dim your light so others can stay comfortable in their shadows. It takes courage to recognize when connection becomes corrosion. Some people come into your life as teachers, not companions. Their role is to awaken boundaries you didn't know you needed. Once you've learned the lesson, the kindest thing you can do for them and for yourself is to bow and release. The truth is, energy is contagious. If you spend enough time around anxiety, it starts to sound like your own voice. If you linger in bitterness, your tongue begins to echo its taste. Without noticing, you start carrying emotional debts that were never yours to pay. That's why Buddhism teaches not just compassion for others, but discernment of company. The people you surround yourself with are the weather of your inner world. Choose climates where your soul can breathe. So how do you know when it's time to let go? Pay attention to your body. It tells the truth, long before your mind admits it. After spending time with someone, do you feel expanded or drained, clear or confused, peaceful or heavy? The answer is not a judgment of them. It's a mirror of you. The body always knows when it's standing in sunlight or shadow. Letting go doesn't require grand gestures or confrontation. Often it's quieter. It's the text you don't send, the argument you don't restart, the meeting you no longer force. It's the decision to stop explaining your worth to those committed to misunderstanding it. And it begins within. Sometimes the most toxic person in your life is the voice in your own head, the one repeating old scripts written by fear and doubt. You can love others only as deeply as you love the silence inside yourself. When you clean the internal house, you stop inviting chaos to dinner. Try this: sit somewhere alone, somewhere unhurried. Close your eyes and imagine the people, habits, or situations that leave you feeling heavy. See each one as a thread tied around your wrist. Some are gentle, others tight. Now take a breath and one by one untie them, not with anger, but with gratitude. Whisper, "Thank you for the lesson, but I release you now." Feel the air rush back into your palms. That's the sound of space returning. In Buddhist practice, we call this upadana, the release of clinging. It's not a one-time event, but a daily renewal. You let go again and again because attachment grows quietly like ivy. The work is not to hate the ivy, but to notice when it starts to cover your windows. This act of release doesn't make you lonely. It makes you available to real love, to real peace, to real presence. When you stop spending your energy on people who drain you, you create room for those who nourish you, those who see your silence not as distance, but as depth. One day, you'll look around and realize your circle has changed. The noise is gone. The laughter is softer, truer. The conversations are fewer, but richer. That's what happens when you choose alignment over approval. You stop chasing connections and start cultivating resonance. And yes, there will be grief. Every ending leaves behind a ghost. You may miss the very people you had to walk away from. That's okay. Missing someone doesn't mean you were wrong to leave. it means you loved sincerely. The ache you feel is not a chain, it's proof of your humanity. But remember, pain is a visitor. It arrives to show you where attachment lives, then it leaves once it's seen. So tonight, let's release together. Take a slow breath in, hold it gently, and as you exhale, imagine everything that no longer serves you, dissolving into the night air. Breathe out the noise, the guilt, the expectations. Let your shoulders drop. Let your mind unclench. Whisper softly, "I set it down now." And when the quiet arrives, as it always does after a long storm, notice what remains. It's not emptiness, it's space. Space for clarity, for laughter, for peace to return and sit beside you again. The Buddha once said, "Let go or be dragged." Those 5 words are both warning and invitation. When you release the weight, you rise. When you stop gripping the past, the present finally takes your hand. So if you've been holding too tightly, let tonight be your permission to loosen the grip. Not in anger, but in wisdom. Not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started caring for yourself. Peace is not a place you find. It's the space you make when you stop clinging. Let the lantern rise. Let the old stories fall. Let go just enough to breathe again. There's a gentle truth the Buddha taught again and again. What you do most becomes what you are. Not what you dream, not what you say, but what you quietly repeat when no one is watching. Every sunrise gives you a fresh canvas, yet most of us paint the same patterns, the same brush strokes, because habit, not chance, creates the texture of a life. Transformation doesn't arrive as lightning. It comes like rain, drop by drop, day by day. Until one morning the landscape is green, and you can't quite remember when the desert turned to field. We live in an age addicted to the dramatic. We crave breakthroughs, instant results, visible change. But truth moves in whispers. Real evolution is invisible at first, buried beneath repetition, so ordinary it's easy to overlook. The Buddha compared it to water dripping on stone, so slow, so soft, yet over time, even the hardest rock yields. Maybe you think you've failed because your steps are small. Maybe you've told yourself you lack discipline, that others are stronger, smarter, more gifted. But what if greatness is simply devotion to the little things done with care? One mindful breath in the morning, one moment of stillness before replying, one choice to forgive instead of retaliate. These seem like nothing, yet they carve new pathways in the mind, rewiring your inner landscape, one quiet act at a time. Picture a pot of still water. When you drop a single pebble in it, ripples outward, touching every edge. Your small habits are those ripples. You think they begin and end with you, but they influence every corner of your day, your thoughts, your tone, the energy you bring into each room. A 5-minute meditation may feel like a grain of sand against the tide of chaos, but that grain builds dunes. That tide slowly learns to soften. There's an old saying in the monasteries: sweeping the floor each day keeps the mind from gathering dust. Dust never stops falling, and so the monk never stops sweeping. This is how habit becomes sanctuary. Not punishment, not perfection, just a rhythm that keeps the soul clear. You don't need to overhaul your life tonight. Begin with one anchor. When you wake, before reaching for the phone, reach for your breath. When you eat, taste the food instead of scrolling through someone else's meal. When you walk, let your feet meet the ground as if greeting an old friend. When you rest, rest fully. No guilt, no multitasking with your thoughts. These tiny acts of awareness are bricks in the temple of mindfulness. One day, you'll step back and see the shape you've built, strong, simple, luminous. Let's talk about identity for a moment. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, even a small one, you are rewriting who you believe you are. If you meditate for 2 minutes, you become someone who honors silence. If you journal 1 line a night, you become a writer of your own story. The mind takes note saying, "This is who I am now." Then the next small act becomes easier because identity guides action more deeply than intention ever will. First, you form the habit. Then, the habit forms you. Buddhist psychology calls this bhavana cultivation. Just as a gardener tends the same patch of soil, pulling weeds, watering, protecting you, tend the mind. Not once, but every day. The garden doesn't grow because of one grand gesture. It grows because someone cared enough to keep showing up. You may be tempted to measure your worth in leaps. Don't. Measure it in returns. Did you return to your breath when distracted? Did you return to kindness after anger? Did you return to your practice after forgetting it for a while? Each return is a victory. Each return is a petal opening on the path toward freedom. Here's something to try tonight. Before you sleep, recall one small thing you did today that honored peace. Maybe you listened without interrupting. Maybe you took a deep breath before replying. Maybe you simply paused before judging yourself. Smile at that. The mind loves recognition. Gratitude seals learning. When you praise the quiet effort, you encourage the next one to bloom. And if you failed, if you scrolled, snapped, rushed, forgot, smile again. The mind learns best through kindness, not cruelty. Start again tomorrow. Start as many tomorrows as you need. In Buddhism, there is no deadline for awakening. There is only the next breath. Each breath is a doorway. Each doorway opens the same space now. Think of small habits as seeds of awareness. You can't rush them open. You water them. You protect them. And one day you notice shade where once there was only heat. The people around you may not see your transformation, but they'll feel it. The calm in your eyes, the patience in your voice, the steadiness in your step. That's the harvest of small things. And something else happens too. Once your inner rhythm stabilizes, discipline stops feeling like effort. It becomes music. You start craving what nourishes you. You find yourself drawn naturally to stillness, the way a sunflower turns to light. That's how you know the practice has entered your bones. Small habits are not minor. They are sacred repetitions, prayers disguised as motions. Folding your clothes carefully, washing dishes with attention, lighting a candle in gratitude. These are not chores. They are ways of saying, "I am awake here." Every gesture, no matter how small, can carry the weight of your intention. When done with awareness, the ordinary becomes divine. So tonight, as the world quiets, ask yourself gently, what tiny act can I repeat tomorrow that aligns me with peace? One sip of water in stillness, one breath before words, one moment of gratitude before sleep. Choose it, protect it, repeat it until it becomes who you are. Because in the end, your life will not be shaped by your grand resolutions or your loud declarations. It will be shaped by what you whisper to yourself every day. It will be shaped by the small sacred things you keep doing long after the noise has stopped. Let your transformation be slow, steady, and unseen. One step, one breath, one habit at a time. Listen closely, not to me, but to the hum underneath the noise around you. Somewhere beneath the traffic, the conversations, the ping of your phone, there's a rhythm that never stopped playing. It's the rhythm of the present moment. Most of us have forgotten how to hear it. The world we live in moves fast. every second something demands your attention. Newswork, the constant chorus of what's next. It's no wonder our minds stay restless, our hearts uneasy. But the Buddha taught that suffering doesn't come from what happens, it comes from how we respond. We can't always quiet the outer world, but we can train the inner one to stay still while it spins. This is mindfulness, not escape, not denial, but mastery, the art of staying centered when everything else trembles. Imagine yourself as a tree in a storm. The wind howls, rain lashes at your leaves, thunder rolls in your bones, but deep below your roots hold the earth. You bend, but you don't break. The storm passes. It always does. Most people live on the surface, reacting to every gust, flinching at every drop. They forget they have roots. Mindfulness is how you remember. It begins with a single breath. That's all. One conscious inhale that reminds you, I am here. This is now. Then one exhale that whispers, I can let this go. Every mindful breath is a small act of rebellion against chaos. When you stop rushing, even for a heartbeat, the world slows to meet you. There's a saying in the Dhammapada, the mind is everything. What you think, you become. And yet most of us don't think, we react. Someone cuts you off in traffic and you flare with anger. A coworker criticizes you and you defend. A memory arises and you replay it like an old movie you hate but can't stop watching. These reactions are habits carved deep in the mind. But habits can be rewritten. The difference between reaction and response is one breath. That breath is the bridge between chaos and calm. So when life provokes you, when someone's words sting, when plans collapse, when the heart clenches, pause. Feel the body before the mind begins its stories. Notice the tightening in your chest, the heat behind your eyes. Breathe into it instead of pushing it away. Let the feeling have space to exist, and in that space, it begins to soften. This is how mindfulness turns storms into teachers. Each wave that once drowned you now carries a lesson. Anger becomes awareness. Fear becomes focus. Anxiety becomes a compass pointing toward what needs your care. A Zen master once said, "Don't learn how to react. Learn how to respond." Reaction is reflex. Response is wisdom. Reaction is fire. Response is light. One burns without purpose, the other illuminates the way. Think about your day. How many moments did you lose to reaction? How many times did you let someone else's mood rewrite your peace? Mindfulness is how you reclaim those moments. It's how you remind yourself that your energy is your responsibility. You cannot control what others say or do, but you can choose not to hand them the steering wheel of your mind. When chaos arrives, and it always will treat it like a bell instead of a bomb, let it ring you awake. Ask, what is this moment asking of me? Not why is this happening to me, but how can I meet it wisely? Some days, the wisest thing is silence. Some days, it's patience. Some days, it's walking away before words become weapons. And on rare, sacred days, it's laughter, that light-hearted reminder that life's drama is only as heavy as we decide to hold it. The Buddha once held up a glass of water and asked his students, "How heavy is this glass?" They shouted out answers, "Half a pound, 2." The Buddha smiled. It doesn't matter how heavy it is. What matters is how long you hold it. If I carry it all day, my arm will ache. But if I set it down from time to time, it will always feel light. Mindfulness teaches us when to set the glass down. It doesn't deny the weight, it just reminds us we don't have to clutch it forever. So how do we bring this awareness into daily life? Slowly, gently, like learning to play an instrument. Your presence strengthens with practice. When you eat, taste the food fully. Feel its texture, its temperature, its gift. When you walk, feel the ground beneath your feet, not as a habit, but as communion. When you listen, really listen, not waiting for your turn to speak, but hearing the world breathe through another person's voice. These small acts are sacred. Mindfulness isn't limited to temples or cushions. It belongs in traffic lights, in laundry rooms, in checkout lines. Every ordinary moment is a doorway. You just have to remember to step through it. And when you forget, because you will, that's okay. Forgetting is part of the path. Awareness is not perfection. It's returning. The moment you notice you've drifted, you've already come back. Over time, something extraordinary begins to happen. The same world that once exhausted you starts to feel lighter. The noise doesn't vanish, but it loses its power. You begin to sense stillness even in movement, quiet, even in conversation space, even in difficulty. That's when you realize mindfulness was never about controlling life. It was about remembering you were never separate from it. So as you listen now, let's practice together. Take a deep, slow breath in. Feel it rise through the chest. Hold it softly at the top, not with tension, but with tenderness. Then exhale slowly, letting the shoulders fall. Notice how even a single conscious breath can change the atmosphere around you. Imagine carrying that awareness into the world tomorrow, into work, into traffic, into conflict. Imagine moving through chaos with the calm of someone who knows storms are temporary. You are not the waves. You are the ocean that holds them. And in that vastness, nothing can truly shake you. Every journey outward is only a reflection of what happens within. The cities we build, the relationships we form, even the dreams we chase, they all mirror the landscape of the mind. Yet how often do we pause to walk through that inner terrain? How often do we sit quietly, not to escape the world, but to understand what shapes the way we see it? Self-inquiry in Buddhist practice is not an act of self-criticism. It is an act of courage. It means turning the light inward, shining it through the corridors of thought and emotion to see what lives there without judgment. Because how can you heal what you refuse to see? How can you understand life if you have never met yourself completely? We spend years studying the world, languages, systems, history, but rarely do we study the mind that studies. We collect facts and call it knowledge, but without awareness, knowledge becomes clutter. True wisdom begins when the observer learns to watch the observer. Close your eyes for a moment and picture your mind as a vast sky. Thoughts drift across it like clouds. Some are soft and harmless. Others gather into storms. Most people mistake the clouds for the sky itself. They identify with every passing thought, every feeling, every memory. But self-inquiry is the gentle art of remembering. I am not the clouds. I am the sky that holds them. When you begin this practice, it can feel disorienting. You may notice how noisy your mind truly is, how often it replays, rehearses, and regrets. That's okay. The goal is not to silence the noise, but to understand its pattern. Each thought, each emotion is a message, not a verdict. Fear might whisper, "Protect what you love." Anger might shout, "Something here feels unjust." Even sadness can be sacred if you learn to listen instead of resist. There's a story of a monk who asked his teacher, "How do I know myself?" The teacher handed him a bowl of water and said, "Stir it." The monk swirled the water until it turned cloudy. The master then said, "Now look into it." The monk frowned. "I can't see anything." The master nodded. "Exactly. Now wait." They sat in silence until the water stilled and the monk saw his own reflection. The teacher smiled. The mind works the same way. Clarity doesn't come from effort. It comes from stillness. Self-inquiry begins in that stillness. It doesn't demand that you fix or label what you find. It only asks that you observe. When anger arises, notice how it feels in the body, the heat in the chest, the tightening of the jaw. When fear visits, trace where it hides, maybe in the stomach, maybe in the throat. By naming the sensations gently, here is tension, here is worry, you stop being the emotion and start being its witness. And witnessing changes everything. The moment you see a thought as a thought, it loses its power to control you. You no longer drown in it, you float above it. The Buddha compared this awareness to standing on the riverbank instead of being swept downstream. The water still flows, but you are not at its mercy. But let's be honest, looking inward isn't always peaceful. Sometimes you discover parts of yourself you'd rather not meet: the jealous voice, the impatient one, the fearful child, still hiding under layers of ambition. Yet those are the exact places where compassion is born. You cannot love humanity if you have declared war on your own heart. So approach yourself like a kind teacher, not a strict judge. Ask gentle questions. What am I really feeling right now? What story am I telling myself about this moment? Is it true? Does it serve peace? Write the answers if you can. Not for anyone to read, writing is simply a mirror that doesn't blink. The more honest you are, the lighter you become. Pretending costs energy. Authenticity restores it. Self-inquiry doesn't make you flawless, it makes you free. When you understand your triggers, the world loses its power to provoke them. When you see where fear lives, it stops sneaking up from the dark. When you accept that imperfection is part of being human, you stop chasing the impossible version of yourself that only exists in comparison. A wise teacher once said, "Awareness is the beginning of change." You cannot transform what you refuse to face. But when you look directly, kindly, steadily, even your shadows begin to soften. They no longer need to hide. They become teachers pointing toward balance. Here's a small way to practice. Each evening before sleep, close your eyes and replay your day like a film. Watch without editing. Notice moments you felt peace, moments you felt tension. When did your breath shorten? When did your shoulders relax? The body keeps perfect record of your truth. Use it as your guide. Then choose one insight, just one, to carry into tomorrow. Maybe it's I react when I feel unseen, or I rush when I feel uncertain. Awareness is enough, no fixing required. Over time, this daily reflection becomes a lantern. You start to see patterns, and with them choices. You realize that you are not doomed to repeat yesterday. Every moment of awareness is a doorway to begin again. The Buddha described the mind as a house with many rooms. In the unexamined life, we live only in the front hall, reacting to whatever knocks. But through self-inquiry, we start opening doors, exploring the quiet chambers where understanding sleeps. We discover forgotten rooms filled with patience, forgiveness, creativity. Eventually, we find a small, still space at the center, the room without walls. That's where the self dissolves and only awareness remains. And in that awareness, everything softens. You no longer need to defend or decorate your identity. You see that the person you call I is a wave on the ocean, real yet inseparable from the whole. The ego begins to bow, and peace takes its place. So tonight, if you can sit for a while in silence, let the outer world fade. Turn inward gently. Ask your heart, what truth am I avoiding? Then listen not with the mind, but with presence. Whatever arises, welcome it as a guest. Even discomfort is part of the conversation. The goal is not to fix the self, but to understand it so deeply that the illusion of separation fades. When you know yourself clearly, compassion becomes effortless, because you see that the same waves of fear and hope, pain and joy move through everyone else too. Self-knowledge is not the end of the path, it is the gate. Through it all, wisdom begins. So breathe, be still, step inside the house of your own heart, turn on the light, look around. Everything you seek out there has been waiting for you here all along. There's a moment each morning right before the screen lights up when the world is still whole. You can hear the wind outside, maybe the hum of early traffic, maybe your own breath. Then one touch, one glowing rectangle, and that world vanishes. You're pulled into timelines, headlines, other people's noise. 1,000 lives crowd your own. And by breakfast, you've already lost the quiet voice that lives underneath it all. The Buddha warned that the mind is a wild horse. In our time, that horse has learned to gallop through Wi-Fi. Every ping is a spur, every scroll another gallop toward nowhere. We think we're connecting, but more often we're scattering. The world's noise has moved into our pockets, and the mind no longer rests. Digital detachment isn't rejection of the world. It's remembering that you have a pulse that doesn't depend on notifications. It's choosing to return to the pace of breath instead of the speed of information. Because the truth is, attention is the most sacred thing you own. What you give it to becomes your life. Think about it each day you hand your awareness to devices built to keep it. They promise connection, but connection without presence is emptiness wearing a bright costume. You scroll through laughter that isn't yours, arguments that don't concern you, and gradually your mind fills with echoes of strangers. The silence you once carried, that deep healing silence, becomes replaced by noise you didn't choose. So tonight, I'm not asking you to abandon technology. I'm asking you to take it off the throne. Let it serve you, not summon you. Try this small ritual before reaching for your phone in the morning place. A hand over your heart. Feel it beat. That's your first notification of the day life reminding you that you're still here. Let that be enough for a moment. Breathe. Listen to what your own energy feels like before the world arrives. When you do step online, step with awareness. Notice how your body reacts. Does your breath shorten? Does your jaw tighten? That's the mind's way of saying, this is too much. We often ignore those messages until exhaustion becomes our only silence. But you can choose to pause before that. Schedule solitude the way you schedule meetings. Call it sacred because it is. An hour without a screen is not wasted time, it's medicine. Sit somewhere quiet. Let the mind detox from the constant scrolling, the constant comparing. At first, it may feel strange, like missing a limb. But that emptiness is not absence, it's healing. It's your awareness returning to its natural rhythm. In the monasteries, monks call this noble silence. It's not just the silence of speech, it's the silence of consumption, the absence of input. In that quiet, the heart begins to hum again. You start to feel your own presence as something tangible, the warmth of being alive without needing to broadcast it. Once a young student asked a master, "Why do you spend so much time alone?" The master smiled, "Because when I'm alone, I meet everyone." The student frowned, not understanding. In silence, the master continued, "I meet the parts of myself I abandon when I'm busy being visible. The same is true for you. Every moment you step away from noise, you step toward authenticity. you rediscover what you think, what you feel, what you believe, not what you've absorbed. In that space, creativity returns. Intuition sharpens. You begin to see life not through the lens of endless comparison, but through the lens of clarity. Try a simple experiment this week. Choose one daily moment to unplug completely, maybe during meals, maybe just before bed. No phone, no music, no podcast, just you and the ordinary world. Notice how different food tastes without distraction. Notice how the air feels on your skin. Notice how your thoughts slow down when they're not being chased by images. You might find that boredom arrives first. That's normal. The mind addicted to stimulation panics when the noise stops. But stay. Boredom is not emptiness. It's the space where imagination breathes again. Out of boredom, reflection is born. From reflection, understanding. And from understanding, peace. Technology itself isn't the enemy. Attachment is. The device doesn't trap the mind. Craving does. Craving to be seen, to be updated, to never miss out. But ask yourself, miss out on what? The true fear isn't missing the world. It's missing your life while staring at its reflection through glass. There's a saying in the sutras, when you learn to be content in solitude, you'll never be lonely again. Because loneliness isn't the absence of people. It's the absence of connection to yourself. You can sit in a crowd and feel empty, or sit alone and feel full. The difference is presence. So make silence your ally again. Walk without headphones sometimes. Let your thoughts wander instead of being curated by algorithms. Listen to the world directly. The rustle of leaves, the hum of distant voices, the honest rhythm of rain. These sounds existed long before any playlist, and they carry a purity that no technology can mimic. When you return to the digital world after your pause, do it with awareness. Scroll slower. Speak kinder. Share with intention, not impulse. Let your words be offerings, not noise. Technology can spread wisdom as easily as distraction if guided by mindfulness. But never forget, your worth is not measured in likes or views. The tree does not bloom for attention. It blooms because blooming is its nature. Be like that tree. Grow quietly. Root deeply. Let your presence be your message. And when the day ends before sleep, let the last light you see be a candle, not a screen. Let the last sound you hear be your own breath, not the world's noise. Because the day began with you, and it deserves to end with you too. Tomorrow, the world will call again. It always does. But tonight, let the phone rest. Let the noise fade. And let yourself remember what life sounds like without interruption. The signal you've been searching for doesn't come from towers or satellites. It's been broadcasting from your own heart all along. You only have to disconnect to hear it. There comes a moment on every path when you realize you can't control the horizon. You can walk, you can plant, you can give everything of yourself, but the timing of bloom, the shape of rain, the kindness of sun are never in your hands. The mind resists this truth. It wants guarantees, patterns, predictability. But life, in its infinite wisdom, offers you something softer and far more profound: surrender. Surrender is not defeat. It's the release of struggle. It's the quiet admission that control was never the same as peace. It's the moment the farmer stops pulling at the roots to see if the crops are growing. He knows his task: to plant, to water, to care. The rest belongs to the rhythm of the world. You can feel this truth in your own breath. You inhale deliberately, but the exhale happens by itself. Life has always been this partnership between effort and allowing. But somewhere along the way, we learned to worship effort alone, to measure our worth by outcome, to chase success as if it could grant us serenity. The Buddha taught the opposite. He said that liberation comes not from what you achieve, but from what you release. You are not here to control the story. You are here to live it fully, to do your part with honesty, and then trust the unfolding. When you attach yourself to results, whether it's recognition, love, perfection, you tie your peace to conditions beyond your reach. But when you focus on the integrity of your effort, peace becomes immediate because it lives in this very moment, not in some imagined future reward. Think of a potter shaping clay. If she obsesses over the final vase, her hands stiffen and the form collapses. But when she attends to the feel of the clay, the texture beneath her fingers, the rhythm of the wheel creation flows through her naturally. That is surrender, not apathy, but intimacy with the present. Maybe you've been forcing something lately, a dream that won't open a person you can't change, a goal that seems to move further the harder you chase it. Take a breath. Loosen your grip. What if the struggle itself is the lesson? What if letting go of how it should be is the only way to see what it truly is? Surrender asks you to trust the unseen currents, to believe that even detours serve a design too vast to map. In the Dhamma, this is called upekkha, equanimity, the serene acceptance that life moves as it must, that pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame are twin waves on the same sea. You do not need to tame the ocean. You need only to stop fearing its motion. In surrender, you begin to see that success and failure are just costumes. What matters is the consciousness you wear underneath. A plan that falls apart might be saving you from a smaller destiny. A door that closes might be opening silence, the very teacher you've been avoiding. Even heartbreak, when held with awareness, becomes a path back to tenderness. So how do we practice this art of letting go in a world that glorifies control? Start with humility. Start with one breath. Each exhale is life teaching you release. Each sunrise is proof that endings are beginnings in disguise. Say to yourself, I will do my part and let the rest unfold. Then do your part fully, sincerely, joyfully, and walk away light. There's a story told among teachers of a disciple who worked tirelessly for enlightenment. He meditated for hours, studied scriptures, practiced austerities, yet peace eluded him. In despair, he went to his master and said, I have done everything. Why have I not awakened? The master smiled, poured a cup of tea, and kept pouring even as it overflowed. The disciple cried, Stop, it's spilling everywhere. The master nodded, and so is your effort. Empty the cup. When the student finally stopped trying to control enlightenment, stillness arrived by itself. His very surrender became the door. You see, surrender doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing everything from a place of trust instead of tension. It's the difference between swimming upstream and floating with the current while still steering gently with your hands. Life carries you either way. Your choice is how peacefully. Try this practice at the end of each day. Review what you did, what you said, what you gave. Bless your effort, not your result. Whisper, I have done my part. Then mentally place the rest into the river of life. Picture it carrying your worries downstream into the vastness of things beyond your knowing. Sleep not with the weight of unfinished plans, but with gratitude for having shown up. When you live this way, outcomes begin to lose their tyranny. Success feels lighter, failure less final. You begin to sense that both are teachers pointing to the same truth. Nothing is permanent, and that's where freedom lives. And perhaps This is what all your searching has been about, not to perfect the outer world, but to rest peacefully within it, to know that you can build, strive, love, and still be free from the ache of control. When the heart learns this balance, even disappointment feels sacred. Look around you now. The world is still moving, oceans, rising winds, shifting stars, dying and being born. None of it needs your permission. You belong to that same effortless rhythm. You are not a manager of existence. You are a participant in its wonder. So tonight, sit quietly. Feel the breath move through you, your body rising and falling like a tide that's been doing this since before your name was spoken. Everything you feared, losing everything you've tried to hold, is already part of a greater dance. You cannot fall out of it. You can only stop resisting it. Let this be your mantra: I trust what unfolds. Say it when plans crumble. Say it when patience runs thin. Say it when life refuses to fit your expectations. Then breathe. Return to the present, the only place where peace ever truly lives. Because in the end, surrender is not the end of effort. It's the end of struggle. It's the beginning of harmony. It's the point where doing and being become the same gesture, an open hand offered to the mystery. So let go. Not because you've given up, but because you finally understand that everything good, every joy, every lesson, every awakening comes not from forcing life, but from trusting it. And in that trust, you will find what you've been seeking all along: not control, but calm. Not answers, but awareness. Not perfection, but peace. Let go. Let it all unfold. Let yourself be carried. This is freedom. This is home.